Well, this is pretty exciting.
So their UX is not great yet.
Yeah.
They're far from being great on the live, but it's a nice feature.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I think we should try it because you have so many people following you on Substack, and they see your videos and everything, but there is something different in doing things live.
Yes, I think so. And,
and look how, people are joining. We already have 40 people with us.
Very exciting. Wow. Technology, eh?
Look at that. We are going to a technocratic world, so we may as well catch up, right?
Yeah, I know. But, I love it so long as we have options to do others. If they take away other options and you're stuck with one, because I already had the experience of getting debanked from one bank, and it's it's nothing. It's not like they tore my nails out or anything. But at the same time, you realize, oh my God, all these things I'm trying to do,
dependent on them. Yeah,
they can just cut me off like this, and then what?
Yeah.
So anyway,
recently? When you were debanked?
Yeah, it was last month.
Why?
Last month. I don't know. It's in the algorithms and you can't quite figure it out. But it took me a month to unblock myself, and I got unblocked maybe 3 or 4 days ago again.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Well, let's just say hi to some people. Can you see the list of people joining? So Jimmy said hi to you.
AI or L. I can see M. Rothschild.
Yeah. Rick, hey, good morning from Philly land. Someone asked which country it was that you were debanked.
France, actually, but the bank's headquarters is in a different. The bank is incorporated in a different EU country, one of those Baltic things. But my account was in France.
Right.
And I don't know what the deal was, but they started asking me for documents and other documents. And then every time I uploaded anything, they were like, computer says no. And you can't find out what it is, why, It's just, they just, at one point, after you uploaded, I think 2 or 3 wrong documents, they just block your account.
Yeah.
And there's no, there's not a human being that tells you, oh, we need this detail or we need that detail or you're not in compliance over this or that. They just block you. And now you can't pay bills and you can't receive any money. Which is
I know.
Really,
it's horrible. That's why, first of all, you have to have more than one bank account.
Yes. But it's all the same matrix. It's all the same matrix. So
I know. Trust me, I know. I just wrote an article about it.
That, there's no more due process. Because if, let's say, I'm laundering money for a terrorist organization or a whatever, a drug gang, normally somebody would have to file a case, call the police, prosecute you, and then give you a chance to see what you're guilty of and give you an opportunity to defend yourself. And then if you're proven guilty, then you're punished. Here,
not anymore.
You get flagged up for some reason that you don't know what it is. The punishment is almost immediate. The banks have deputized themselves as prosecutors, the judges, the juries, and there's no defense, there's no due process. The punishment is immediate. And even though there's no violence, it's not like they beat you, they torture you, they shoot you. It is extremely debilitating. And not only that, but once you got the punch in the face from debanking, then you think like, okay, so I had all these plans. I was going to do this and this and that. But what's the point if they can pull the rug from under me at any point for any reason?
That's right.
And then I received, sorry to be banging, but this is relevant. I received emails asking me, oh, hey, you gave an interview with so-and-so. I swear I don't even know, because I know people by their names, by their first name. You're Efrat. I don't know if your publication is under some offshore company in some jurisdiction and maybe you're sanctioned, how the hell do I know?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so they send me an email saying like, oh, were you in contact with this company because you gave an interview to them? I don't even know who they're talking about. And so they say that they are a sanctioned entity and you might be liable at law for this and this and might be these punished. I'm like,
What the
what am I
flip?
supposed to ask Efrat now? Efrat, are you by any chance a sanctioned entity? Or are you associated with an sanctioned entity? Or did somebody you're associated with do business with a sanctioned entity? Because in that case, we have to stop this call right away. Anyway.
Stop talking. Yeah, I'm with you, Alex. This is going to get worse. And just to add on top of your story, just another one from my angle, I have a normal bank account. And then I also have a digital bank account with a company called Wise Online. Because for Substack, I need my Stripe account to pay me the $2-3 I get from them every month. I needed to go through a bank account, and they don't accept Israeli bank accounts. So I had to open the Wise bank account, and then it goes there. It has a European address in Belgium, I think. And then I can pull out the money to my Israeli bank account. So I go like 3 or 4 ways, like Substack, Stripe, Wise, and then my Israeli bank account. And then it gets to me. So like 4 people take money from me and the process. Now, Wise decided to do an authentication stage, like a new authentication thing. And I tried to do it. But then they told me at one point, you have to move on to your phone because we need to, again, do the thing, we take the selfie and we do the whole thing, like the scanning of the driver's license. We need to authenticate you. So I said, fine, I'll do it from the phone. I get to the phone. I try to do it. It doesn't recognize that I'm on a phone. It tells me you have to do it on a phone, but I'm on a bloody phone. Like, let me do it. So I start writing to their customer service, and that took like 2-3 weeks, and they couldn't figure out what the bug was. I couldn't authenticate. I couldn't access my money. So in a world where we become more and more digital, this is a digital bank account. I've never seen that bank, right?
Yeah.
We are going to be not only doomed because they can close down on our accounts and take what's ours, but they can also not give us any way in to speak to anyone. This is like, computer says no, and that's it, you're fucked. And the technology doesn't recognize your phone or something, and that's it. So I didn't plan on doing this, Alex, but you made me. It's because of you. I didn't plan on talking about Bitcoin, but that is the reason why I Bitcoin. Because when things like that started happening to me a few years ago, when COVID started, I was like, no fucking chance in hell that I'm going to let the institutions permit or not permit me to touch what's mine. So I need something that is only under my permission, and Bitcoin is permissionless. So when I hold my keys to my coins and it's in my hardware wallet, no one can tell me you can access it or not access me. The responsibility is solely on me. If I have my private keys, I can access my money, and fuck you all. And that's the primary reason.
Are we allowed to say this on Substack?
I don't care whether we're allowed or not. They're online devices anyway. I don't care.
You're the Voice is brought to you by Trezor, the original Bitcoin hardware wallet company pioneering the development of self-custody for crypto assets since 2013, empowering individuals with an open source device, enabling beginners and experts to easily and securely hold their coins. I find my Trezor super easy to use and recommend it to my friends and family. Enjoy my 5% discount on Trezor products by clicking the link in the show notes and using the code EFLAT. Are you coming to BTC Prague? The biggest, most influential Bitcoin-only event in Europe returns on June 19 to 21, with 200 plus speakers on 4 stages, 100 Bitcoin companies presenting at the expo, and 10,000 like-minded Bitcoiners and freedom lovers from all around the world. There's a great emphasis this year on the freedom movement, so if you're a freedom maxi like me, You don't want to miss this event. I'm excited to attend once again as a speaker and to interview the best and brightest for my podcast. In fact, BTC Prague is where I conducted my epic interview with Michael Saylor. The event runs for 3 days with a developers day, pitching contest, panels, presentations, and parties. Ticket prices increase on the 1st of each month, so make sure to get your ticket now. Use my code FLAT for a 10% discount, and see you in Prague.
I on that same subject, Efrat, I have to share this because it could be helpful to our listeners and viewers. You know, the same problem of the same matrix in a different way. So I'm going to the Cornerstone Forum in Calgary on Saturday, 10th May, and the person who is arranging my trip, they now bought 3 plane tickets for me because they bought me a plane ticket. It didn't work. I called them. I said, look, this doesn't suit me, this and that. Then they bought the second ticket because they couldn't change this one. And then they get me the second ticket. They made a mistake. They made a mistake by, a correspondent flight doesn't fit. So I said, look, I'm not going to be able to make this flight. You have to change me the second flight. And then they were not able to change this. So they had to scrap the whole thing and start new again. Well, this is all online, one of these online wonders. And they also bought insurance so that in case they have to change the tickets, that it's covered. Well, guess what? There's nobody to call. There's nobody to honor your insurance. So they're just like, no good. You have to pay. We're not reimbursing you. So and this happened to me a year ago, arranging a different trip. I was doing it myself, and it was such a nightmare that I finally decided. I went in person to my travel agent that I used 20 and 30 years ago. And I said, look, I need to be there this day, here and this date. And can you just organize themselves? And of course, here's a woman who knows her job. He goes I have this and this and this suits you, gives you the advice. And so in 10 or 15 minutes, I had all my tickets, printed out itinerary, no authentications and this and that, and click here and password and open an account and confirm your email. It was just done. And so I'm saying, I'm telling this story because
as well. I don't go anywhere without my travel agent. A woman helping me. That's it.
Yeah. So make travel agents great again, I think.
Exactly.
And I sometimes these things that seem so convenient because you can do it from your computer, you don't have to. They're actually not. And then, I think that travel agents just take a cut from what you buy,
the airline.
But they take it from the airline. So it's not like you're saving anything by doing it yourself. And then when you pay insurance and they say, sue me. What are you going to do? I'm not going to honor your insurance. What are you going to do? You realize you've just thrown money away. And as a result, the poor guy, he bought 3 tickets for one trip for me. What a nightmare. So anyway, I thought I'd share that
multiple bank accounts, travel agents, and Bitcoin.
Travel agents. Yes, exactly.
You got to have some Bitcoin if you want to reserve some financial freedom. I don't care about the money going up, going down, all that stuff in dollar terms. I mean, it's nice, but I'm not looking to be rich. I'm just looking to have access to what's mine and hedge what's mine. And that's why I'm in Bitcoin. That's my primary reason. Okay, Alex, we're here to talk about Europe. Where are you heading? And I want to get as much as of your wisdom as possible because you've been covering this for a long, long time. But just to give it an umbrella kind of entrance to the topic, because this is a huge topic. So just to know which angle we want to go through, you choose. I have asked ChatGPT to give me a nice short summary of where is Europe heading from 5 different angles. So I'm going to read it out to you.
What does it say? I'm dying to know.
Yeah. I'm going to get, it's not bad to be honest, but maybe also because he knows that I am very critical. So he gives me the kind of stuff that I normally seek for. But let's go through it and then you choose which one to start with. So economic, Europe faces stagnating growth, high debt levels, and a challenging transition towards green energy. Deindustrialization risks driven by high energy prices and overregulation are pushing production out of the continent. Okay, that's economics. Military and security. Increased dependence on NATO and the US persists despite growing calls for strategic autonomy. Military capabilities remain fragmented, and the war in Ukraine has exposed logistical and coordination weaknesses. Internal threats from radicalization, migration pressures, and social unrest are rising. Financial. Advancing towards greater financial centralization, digital euro projects, ECB control expansion, and tighter regulation under MiCA, all hints of diminishing national fiscal independence. Geopolitical, externally instability in neighboring regions, Eastern Europe, Middle East, North Africa, fuels geopolitical vulnerabilities. And lastly, governance. The EU is becoming increasingly technocratic, with power consolidating in Brussels. Democratic legitimacy is under strain as national sovereignty clashes with top-down policymaking, especially on digital, climate, and fiscal issues. Not bad, huh?
Pretty good. Pretty good. I'd say it's a good start. But okay, so how do I see it, Expat? I'm in same measures hopeful and worried. And the reasons why I'm hopeful is because, look at us having this conversation. The fact that we can have this conversation, the fact that we have access to such a massive world of knowledge and information that no generation before us has ever been able to even dream about, tells me that this is a completely new element in the social equation that has never existed as far as we know. And so we can't assume that we will follow exactly in the same trajectory as the run-ups to 2 previous world wars. So that gives me a lot of hope. And then, when you see what's going on in France and Germany, Romania, and elsewhere, you see that the people mood is very, very different from the mood in the establishment and everything that we read about in the newspapers and see on TV and radio. So I think that in the end, the will of the people cannot be ignored. And so we've seen now in Romania, finally the Calin Georgescu's faction won the elections by a very comfortable margin, and it's hard to see how they could lose it in the second term. It'll be, maybe the EU will escalate that conflict. Maybe they will take it farther, but that will only make situation more explosive. And so at some point, they already lost control, but it becomes even worse. And everybody's looking, everybody's watching. Then, just this morning in Germany, Friedrich Merz loses his election in the parliament to become to finalize the ruling coalition and to become the new chancellor of Germany. Mm-hmm. Oh my God, this never happened in the post-World War II history in Germany, and it's a massive blow and a humiliation to him. Now he has to go through the second round of voting, which has to happen in the next 14 days. Last I heard, it might actually even happen today, this afternoon. So as we talk, this might be already happening. If he loses, then he might have to withdraw. Germany might have to go to second election. And then they had Alice Weidel give a statement. She said that she feels that this could be a higher power intervention because who is Friedrich Merz? He's a former corporate lawyer, head of BlackRock Germany. BlackRock happens to have extensive investments in Ukraine. And he, on the German political scene, I think he's pretty much the most aggressive proponent of escalating the war in Ukraine against Russia and sending the German Taurus missiles to Ukraine. And so, in order to save your investments, your company's investments in Ukraine, you will risk World War III on the old continent, complete and total destruction of your country, and who knows how many more millions of victims, of casualties,
of course,
civilian and military. So
of course.
That's the negative part. That's the part that has me worried, because the political ruling establishments in Europe, particularly Britain, France, EU, so Brussels, and Germany to a good extent, and then a little bit Poland, they are gung-ho for war. They want war. They want rearmament. They want to spend hundreds of billions of euros of our children's future wealth on building the military-industrial complex. The same thing that President Eisenhower warned us about the catastrophic consequences of supporting the military-industrial complex and where it leads. And we've seen where it led the United States. And now the Europe's political establishment wants to follow exactly in those footsteps, which is insane. But, the reason why I'm cautiously optimistic is because people are saying no. And I think that if people say no with a strong voice and they don't capitulate to political pressures, to censorship, to intimidation, we win 100%.
What do you make of their plans, speaking of the military-industrial complex? They say they need, how much was it, 800 billion for the Rearm Europe plan, and that they have this new union. You tell me if you've heard about it before, the Savings and Investment Union, aiming to redirect or mobilize 10 trillion euros in private savings to fund military expansion. Is this the great taking? Is this what they want to do?
It's not exactly great taking, but it's the great misallocation. They're not going to put guns on our heads and say, give us your money so we can invest it in armaments companies and in the military. But they will apply financial repression. They will oblige pension funds to buy these, government bonds for rearmament and for infrastructure and all. Yeah, they'll call it Freedom and Democracy Fund or whatever. They'll give it some nice name, but yeah, they will. I think we're talking about 10, 12 trillion euros of the savings of the people of European Union, and they will try to allocate as much of that money as they can to the military-industrial complex. Merz is talking about 500 billion, which it could go up to 1.6 trillion. What's her face? Ursula von der Leyen is talking about 800 billion. So, if you put it all together, we're talking trillions. We're literally talking trillions. And where it's taking us is World War III. We're going down the same road that Germany went in the late 20s and 30s. They started with the Young Plan and the Dawes Plan, and, it was all plowing billions and billions of dollars into military rearmaments industries and related, steel, oil,
yes,
chemicals, into creating these corporate conglomerates. This is also happening in Europe, general consolidation of these large corporate oligarchies. And we saw a similar process take shape in Ukraine in the run-up to World War No, sorry, in the run-up to the 2022 war against Russia. The unprovoked one, that one. And then, there's a number of aspects to this which are very, very problematic. And one of them is, you mentioned deindustrialization.
Mm-hmm.
So some people say like, well, what are they going to do? They're destroying the economy. So how are they going to be able to mount up this big war effort against Russia that they want to do? No, they always destroy the economies in the run-up to war. It's not, people when they're prosperous, when the economy is going well, when the politicians are relatively popular, when the whole system is kind of going in the right direction, people are not inclined to go to war. So you have to destroy the economy first. So the whole process of deindustrialization of Europe is part of that. You immiserate the population first. What you get is very high unemployment, particularly what you care is about youth unemployment, because you have all these millions of men with no future, no jobs, no careers, no way to buy homes, get married, have children, have families, anything normal. So you steal their future. And then you say, oh, guess what? You can join our brown shirt movement or, whatever variety. There are many now in Europe. And you will get a nice uniform. You'll get some money. You'll get good status. You're going to get educated about why we have all these problems. Oh, by the way, it's the Russians' fault. And it's going to be your mission, your historical mission to make these nations great again and right the historical wrong. And so you kind of draw into this brown shirt movement all these kind of fanatical types that are already kind of
hopeless,
prone to violence and to solving problems with fists. And then as you pile money, as you give them status and armaments, and you make them, bring them into the political life and make them important, these movements tend to grow. Like the brown shirt movement in Germany in 1930 was, I think, between 200 and 400 men. So they were nothing. They were, unimportant, marginal. But by 1933, when Hitler came to power, they were between 2 and 3 million. It wasn't so funny anymore. Yes, 2 and 3 million. And they, when they do the whole social engineering process of militarization, Nazification of a society, they don't create these groups to go fight the war against the Russians or whoever. Their job is to terrorize the local population. And that's what we had in the 1930s in Germany, the reign of terror against everybody. Tens of thousands of political assassinations and not countless cases of intimidations. You vote this way or you're never going to see your children again. These types of things. This exact thing happened in Ukraine after 2014. And so we shouldn't feel just because nobody's inclined to go fight a war now, they're not planning for war now. They're planning for war in 2029, 2030. So between then and now, watch for all these things happening and push back like your children's life depends upon it.
Tired of feeling like your freedom and future are fading away? Do you live in a country with growing inflation, crazy housing prices, weird culture, and a chaotic economy? You're not alone, and my friend Mikkel Thorpe and his team at Expat Money can help. Mikkel is the world's leading expat consultant on a mission to free you from broken systems. He's been an expat for 25 years, lived in 9 different countries, and has helped hundreds of people with second residencies and passports, offshore banking, international investing, and many other essential tools. If you're serious about protecting your wealth and your family, it's not enough to hope things will get better. You need a plan B in another country. The team at Expat Money can help you build it legally, safely, and without wasting years of research. Visit expatmoney.com/eflat and leave your details for a follow-up. In a world hypnotized and sleepwalking towards totalitarian control and digital enforcement, awakened voices rise to inspire change and radiate hope. In December 2024, I had the honor of hosting Professor Matthias Desmet at a conference I produced called New Totalitarian Order. This masterclass is now recorded and available to watch. The conference explores the psychology behind global mass processes, offering a behind-the-scenes look at science, economics, and human potential. It addresses challenging global agendas, mass formation, transhumanism, consciousness, societal change, and the path to transformation. Click the link in the show notes to access 3.5 hours of exclusive presentations, in-depth content, and my fireside chat with Professor Desmet. Use my code EFRAT for 10% off. I hope you find great value in it.
To add on to what you say, coincidentally, in parallel, they have opened the borders for the past few years, so you get this flood of migrants coming into Europe, making the streets even more radical, even more bubbling with violence and with divide and conquer. And it's just preparing people for a reality of more nationalization, of more radicalization, of more hatred, vengeance, revenge, fear, and loathing. And that's what we get. I mean, Israel is the perfect example for it. We've been living like that for years and years, decades. You go to the streets now. It doesn't matter how tired and exhausted people are from this war. They are still revengeful. Not everyone, obviously. Many people are crying out to stop the war and talking about just, ending this and starting to talk about what's happening in Gaza. But the governance is becoming more and more violent and oppressive towards those Israelis who are talking against the regime. And everyone else is receiving, it's like Elon Musk choosing a few people to amplify their voices on Twitter. It's a bit similar. So the mainstream media and the government is choosing those who are bubbling up the divide to continue dividing people and continuing to scream for more war, more revenge, more, this is the enemy. Continue pointing at your neighbor instead of looking at us.
Yes, exactly. So that's the process of polarization and radicalization in society. Yeah. And when it goes full blown, it becomes extremely difficult for people to speak up. They're afraid because there's really, and you mentioned the migrations. That's the action. It provokes a reaction. So you're creating a polarity, right? And what you will see if you pay attention, this is reported sometimes, but people don't pay attention because now we're still at that marginal level where the brown shirts are, a couple of hundred people. But they're going around, like in cities in Britain, Sweden, Denmark, Holland, France, Germany. Poland, they'll hold their, TikTok marches and they'll have transparents reading, stop migration, we are a Christian culture or something kind of almost acceptable. They're not saying hi Hitler and we are Nazis. They're saying things that a lot of people actually think. So if you see them march past, you think like, oh, that seems reasonable. You might even say like, good going, guys. Good on you. You're right. And so on. But these, give it time. And in fullness of time, these guys, these same ones are going to be picking up your kids on the streets, throwing them into a van and taking them to the Eastern Front to go, act as cannon fodder in their war against Russia. And so, we have to be very careful about this. And I already sometimes talk to people who say like, yeah, I know, but I'm kind of, I can't talk about this openly because of this and that reason. And I'm thinking like, fine, that's fine. Don't talk about it. Cause maybe it's going to be your children. Like, think about all those endless fields of Ukrainian flags, which are on top of dead Ukrainian soldiers. And ask yourself if maybe their parents today don't think, if only I would have spoken up. Now it's too late. Now that your child is under that flag, it's too late to speak up. Now is the time to speak up.
It's the same here. Dead soldiers every day, and obviously tens of thousands of dead children across the fence that I'm not allowed to mention, I'm not allowed to talk about, right? And if I don't talk about it, who's going to talk about it? So all those people who are afraid, this is going to be your child. I had to send my son away. My son is not living anymore in Israel because of that. I do not want him under a flag somewhere. So I will change my life for that. And I don't give a damn about what they say, whether this is, patriotic or some Israelis don't even know what Zionism really is. They call it being Zionistic. They think Zionism is patriotism because that's what they're being taught. So I'm not a good patriot if I don't, because I had served the army, right? So, and if your son doesn't serve, then it all falls on someone else. There's brainwashing and propaganda to the max. So those of you who are aware of what's happening and you are still not talking because you are afraid, you may want to reconsider and start opening your mouth, because it's going to be much worse very soon.
Exactly. But just so that we don't remain stuck in dark visions.
Yes.
I want to say that there's an upside to speaking out. It's not just I take risk in order to prevent something bad happening. No, we have an alternative to make the world a better place. Because, so if you go back to the 1930s, even to 2014, to the run-up to World War I, we were in a completely Western-centric world.
Not 2014. What did you say? 900.
Yeah, I said 2014, 1930s, and then a run up to World War I.
Okay.
Never mind. I just tilted. All the numbers just tilted my brains. But run up to World War I, run up to World War II, run up to the Ukraine war. We were largely, and in World War I and II, completely in a West-centric world. There was no alternative. So the people who ran the money presses, the bank barons and the corporate, and the large corporates, they pretty much had their way by hook or by crook. Today, we have an alternative. So we can go to war against Russia in 2029 or, thereabouts whenever we're sufficiently ready. Or we can dismantle this whole thing and embrace the multipolar integrations and benefit from the investment from the Belt and Road Initiative and trade with the whole world, which is by now, a couple of billion people with spending power. So, anybody who has anything to sell, a good or service, a widget that you think you might be able to market, you have everything and virtually no barrier to entry to do it. And so this is a bonanza for small and medium-sized businesses. Potentially a bonanza for small and medium-sized businesses, for entrepreneurs, for importers, for exporters. And then, not to mention to travel, to visit with other people, to be on good terms with Americans, with the Russians, with the Chinese, with African countries and so on. So, we do away with colonialism and we embrace these multipolar integrations. If that sounds like a fantasy, it isn't. On 15th January this year, Marco Rubio, in his confirmation hearings, pretty much made this point as a statement of policy of the Trump administration. He said, post-World War II world order is obsolete. It's being waged as a weapon against us, meaning the United States, And we have to embrace the reality that we have multipolar integrations. And so the United States, the American people spoke up. They said, enough war, enough being the global policeman. We don't want this anymore. I have an interruption. One of my kids is back from school, so I'll
okay.
just give me a second.
We're waiting. Let me look at the comments. Hey, Larry. Staying Israeli. Yeah, I'm trying to be sane here. It's okay. I'm just talking with our audience. Hello from Sweden, Christopher. Yes. Keep going.
Yeah. So what I mean to say,
multipolar integrations.
Yeah. So what I mean to say, if the American people were able, against all odds and against the best efforts of the ruling establishment, to bring Donald Trump into the White House, whatever you might think about Donald Trump, but he's a change, and he was brought there by the people.
Yeah.
Which tells you that you can't ignore the people power and that the people power can change things, right? So this can be done in Europe as well. You know, if we speak out with a strong voice, if we don't allow ourselves to be intimidated into silence, into being censored, into saying like, oh, you know, I don't want to take risks because I have this and that problem that I'm afraid might harm me. We can change the world for the better. We can throw off this mad march to war. We can change course. And then we too can embrace these multipolar integrations where, you know, rather than going to war against Russia or against China or against whoever, you actually have constructive relations with those countries. You build trade, you build industry, you build exchange, travel, cultural exchanges. You make the world a better place. So instead of having our children under flags, we give them a better world. So, you know, I wanted to say this because this is the reality. This is now really a possibility because that alternative exists. 100 years ago and 80 years ago, it didn't exist. You know, you had the Western centric world and the Western centers of powers pretty much dictated policy by hook or by crook. And so we got 2 world wars and we got the war in Ukraine. It doesn't have to be that way anymore. And so it's up to us. We just have to, you know, keep doing this, keep speaking up, keep, you know, exerting political pressure.
Yeah.
And I think that millimeter by millimeter, inch by inch, we are starting to change course. And just look at how many of their really important agendas fell apart. Remember, we were not supposed to have the old normal. We were supposed to be in the new normal forever.
Yes.
Right? That fell apart. Remember, we were supposed to have the global pandemic treaty under World Health Organization. Well, that fell apart. We were supposed to have vaccine certificates for everywhere. That fell apart. The war in Ukraine is failing. So everything is changing. And so we are winning. And my contention is that the only way that we could lose is if we give up and surrender.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things you do see that is happening more and more is that it's okay to talk about things that 2 or 3 years ago people were afraid to talk about, like the vaccines or you know, the WHO or everything we just mentioned, CBDCs. People didn't want to talk about it because it was all titled conspiracy theories. Now everything is out in the open, and you see more and more mainstream people talking about these things. God forbid, even the chemtrails is coming out, right? The geoengineering is coming out with the UK and everything. It's like things that I would be called names that, you know, Lord would seriously, like the worst names in the world I would be called for talking about geoengineering. Now it's coming out as like, yes, we have been testing it and now officially we're starting to test it in the UK, right? So it's like, it's all coming out. It's the age of revelation. And that's why I'm saying, if you think that what you have to say or what you want to push back on is going to be titled or labeled in some way, give it 6 months. It's not going to be that way anymore because of the speed in which truths are coming out. So just gather your courage and start talking about these things.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And you remember Mike Eden, the former Pfizer. Yeah. Well, he said this. He said it's time to be brave.
Yeah.
And by that, he wasn't saying it's time to run, against the machine guns and blow yourself up. He was saying we have to speak up and risk being wrong. Because some things you might suspect, you might have a gut feeling, but you're not exactly sure because there's no evidence, and so you keep silent. No, I think we have to speak out anyway. And the wonderful thing I find about the internet and the social media is that if you get it wrong, the people will set you straight almost instantaneously because somebody knows this.
Yeah.
And so if you say like, oh, I think this thing is black,
almost
immediately the feedback will be, no, it's not. It's actually, dark brown or blue.
Absolutely.
And they'll explain it to you. And then you go like, okay, cool. So that's another reason not to hesitate because,
absolutely,
if you get it wrong, you get it wrong. Nobody has all the information. Nobody knows everything, but it's by interaction, like it's almost like you're sifting for gold. It's this interaction that's making us smarter, that's making us more sophisticated. And I think that ultimately it's also making us more effective.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. We're in the age of information, of speed, of everything is immediate. You can get instant feedback. The hell with that, we're live with 450 people from all around the world on this app that is not censoring us so far. So it's like, there is hope. Seriously. I want to give you a question that someone wrote here, which is pretty good. Is Donald Trump just another straw man following a script put in front of him? Has U.S. foreign policy changed? That is the question.
So, I can only share my opinion, right? Because I don't know that anybody really knows. But my opinion is that no. My opinion is that he's for real. However, he has started to challenge a status quo that's been entrenched for many, many decades now. He's taken on the military-industrial complex. Even though he's talking about $1 trillion military budget, he said that he wants to half the military budget. He's transitioning the United States. And this, I tried to explain this in one of my recent articles of Substack. He's trying to transition the United States from the British system of free trade to the American system of political economy. And the difference, just to put it in a nutshell, is that one opens the economy wide to unrestricted free trade, and with that, in the end, ends up causing deindustrialization. It makes a nation completely dependent on foreign trade. It destroys employment. It concentrates wealth in big financial centers, and it ultimately leads to the state of permanent warfare. Whereas the American system of political economy is what Germany has applied after World War II, what it has applied before World War I, which made it a rising power, what the United States has applied in the 1800s, when the United States became from, a patchwork of disjointed colonies into one of the leading superpowers of this world. This was described already in 1851 in the book Harmony of Interests by Henry Carey, who used to be economic advisor to Abraham Lincoln. This all went south because somebody assassinated Abraham Lincoln, and then the United States was taken on route of building empires and being a global cop, which then only accelerated and escalated with World War I, World War II. And now we see a very fierce fight for the United States to remain as part of the global rules-based order, whereas the Trump administration wants to turn it towards multipolar integrations. He's taken on the big pharma. He's taken on the big ag. He's taken on many vested interests, very powerful ones. And so he has to tread very, very carefully.
But do you see him stopping the war in Ukraine? Do you see him stopping the war in Israel and in the Middle East?
Well, not exactly, but I don't want to jump to conclusions about it, because the conclusions that are obvious don't really make sense to me. Let's talk about Ukraine for a second. It seems to me that in Ukraine, he's talking to the Russians. There's this rare earth deal, which is being dangled around like a lure, and the Brits have tried to use this lure to bring the United States back on board. And now Trump signed some kind of a deal with Zelensky, right? Which is quite, on paper, very good for the Americans, but without the security guarantee, which was absolutely the key. Because without the United States providing the security for Ukraine, meaning for a government in Kiev that is aligned with Western interests, all of this can go poof, because anybody who comes after, if they're realign Ukraine with Russia, they can say, these agreements that you have here, we're tearing them up because they're meaningless. They were signed by an illegitimate president. So what I think is possible is that the Russians and the Americans have agreed, look, whatever you signed with Zelensky, we can honor that. We'll provide the security, because we'll defeat Ukraine and we'll take full control of Ukraine, whatever we take militarily, and in administrative ways, we'll take control of Kiev and Odessa and Kharkov and everywhere else. So they will bring Ukraine back into Russia's orbit.
Yeah.
This is good for the United States, because they don't have to provide a security guarantee at their own expense, which means placing troops, rearming them, and having the risk of full-scale war against Russia. So there's a massive downside. On the upside, they get whatever they get from Ukraine, and then they have the door wide open to trade with Russia and to develop the 75 to 90 trillion estimated resource wealth that Russia has on their continent, right? And so that way, you are in fact going for multipolar integrations. Now you're opening Russian resource wealth to American corporations, not necessarily to American banks, but American corporations to jointly develop them and market them with Russian companies. And so that's a win-win for everybody. And it's a win for Russia as well, because Russia also neutralizes the risk of having to go to war against the United States. And at the same time, so this is where the continuation of war in Ukraine, for the time being, might be in both Russia's and the United States' interest, because for as long as the fighting is going on, Russia is fulfilling one of the four main objectives of its military campaign, and that is the demilitarization of Ukraine.
Yep.
So as long as the war is continuing, the Ukrainians are wasting weapons and shredding troops on the battlefield, and now it's pretty much the remnants are the extremists or the poor people who got caught in these recruitment drives.
Yeah.
And at the same time, the Europeans, who are still, they cannot cut their losses. The Europeans are slowly but surely disarming themselves and bankrupting themselves. So the Americans kind of want this. So they're like, okay, you guys go ahead, no problem here. Suit yourselves. And the Russians as well are continuing to weaken the powers that are still hostile to Russia. So Ukraine and the European powers like Germany, France, Poland, and so on. So the fact that Trump is just washing his hands and letting it happen without stopping the war, it might be a backroom agreement between the Russians and the Americans to say, like, let it all go. We're going to be in a good, the more Russia wins on the battlefield, the better their position to dictate the terms of peace. And you notice Trump frequently says, I trust Vladimir Putin. I trust Vladimir Putin. He often says that. What does it mean? That whatever happens once Russia takes over Ukraine, he will have a better deal with the Russians than he can have from Macron and Starmers and all these other duplicitous backstabbers in London and Paris and Brussels.
Okay, got it. I have a question that is, it's as if it's not related, but it is, because, and you know it is. Mark Carney, who is, in my opinion, a messenger, right, of the elite, the European elite, right, or the European, whatever you call it, like old money oligarchs. You know better than me. What is the play there? Like, what are they trying to do with placing him now in Canada to lead Canada? This is related to Europe. This is not detached. What do you think is the move with him?
I don't exactly know, but it seems to me that, okay, so Carney is the banker's banker, former governor of Canadian Central Bank, former governor of the British Central Bank, of the Bank of England.
Mm-hmm.
A Davos man through and through, friends with Jeffrey Epstein, friends with King Chuck III, and on and on. So he seems like exactly the puppet of the globalist powers. Why he was brought to Canada, I'm not exactly sure, but it seems to me that there's a good chance that Canada will be one of the casualties of these global changes, and there is a gathering, let's say, a gathering political movement in Alberta to break up with Canada and to become part of the United States.
Yeah.
And this is not something extremely new, radical, and never heard before. This could have happened 150 years ago or so, maybe a bit longer. And I think it's part of the reason why Russia sold Alaska to the United States, because then the United States was going to, together with British Columbia and Alberta, it would be, a big, it would be a very large country neighboring Russia on the Bering Strait, right? And there was an initiative already formulated back then to build a tunnel underneath the Bering Strait to connect Russia and the United States.
Mm.
And actually, I think at some point in 2000 and I don't know if it was 9 or 10 or 15 or, a couple of years ago during Vladimir Putin's presidency, he approved a large multi-billion-dollar infrastructure development plan that included bringing a railway to the Bering Strait with the view of building that tunnel in the future, because, otherwise it doesn't go anywhere. With a view of building that tunnel and connecting the two continents. And then, with these multipolar integrations, you might get high-speed railways connecting Eurasian continent with the American continent, and a completely different plan of world development than what we have had for the past 200 years. And for the past 200 years, we've pretty much had divide and conquer, everybody against everybody at war, and everybody dependent on Western centers of power for credit, for rearmaments, and for political support. So this is, and then, another reason why I think that Trump is for real is I'm listening to what the Russians are saying. I'm listening to what British politicians and British media are saying, the U.S. legacy media, and all of the people that are kind of in the globalist camp. So British politicians,
yeah,
British opinion leaders, the media, Channel 4, BBC, Sky News, they're all out and out on the Trump demonization campaign. I mean, Trump is now more demonized than Putin himself. He's an idiot. He's a moron. He's it's ugly. Yeah. Whereas the Russians are completely supportive. I mean, people are sometimes at a loss over Trump's antics because he says shit that you think like, what the hell? What is this? But they are supportive, and the Chinese, I don't know how it is with the Chinese, but it seems to me that while one kind of narrative is going at the public level, the stuff that's available to the public, I think that at the very top there's some cooperation and coordination
between Russia and the US and China.
Russia, China, and the United States, yes.
Yeah. I have the same feeling. Yeah, it's too simplistic to just try and analyze everything according to what you are being shown.
Yeah, exactly. I think that you can't, whatever is happening on a day-to-day level,
you have to assume.
If you jump to the conclusion, then, a week, 2 weeks, a month later, you find out that that's not what was really happening, that something else was happening.
Yeah. Okay, I want to take you, before we finish off, I want to take you back to the topic of the monetary topic and digital euro and all that noise that they're making around CBDCs and projects, because Europe is, it seems to be that they have chosen this tactic of the CBDCs to accelerate their control over the population in Europe. They have announced that they are coming out in October 2025 with the launch of the digital euro. And they bring several justifications for it. One of them is Trump is pushing stable coins, which is undermining the economy. So we have to balance that. They're saying banks are losing fees, clients are losing, they're losing clients in the banks because of all the different third-party monetary instruments that are out there today, like Bitcoin, like stable coins, like other cryptocurrencies, etc. And their most idiotic justification for it is that they view the digital euro as essential infrastructure. The ECB's director, his name is Piero Cipollone, he also claims that the digital euro is necessary, comparing it to water or electricity, essential services that should be controlled locally. However, they depend on foreign sources for energy and water. So it's like the most idiotic justification. But anyway, they do give that one. And yeah, so I want to ask for your opinion. Where do you think the digital euro is going? Is it just a threat? Is it going to happen? I have my own opinion. I've been covering, for those of you who don't know me, because you're Alex followers, you're welcome to follow my Substack. I write a lot about CBDCs and I analyze a lot of what the ECB is doing. And I think the ECB is going to be the pioneer in retail and wholesale CBDCs, and Israel is going to follow suit, and they said it, that they're waiting for Europe to go first, and many other countries will follow. But what do you think about this whole monetary coup with the digital permissioned, non-private, non-anonymous, highly controlled monetary instrument?
I think that it's an overambitious project, Efrat. We already have digital money, so that's nothing new, and that wouldn't be as controversial as the CBDC as the Europeans have envisioned it. That is, as the European ruling establishment envisioned it. What they want is a programmable CBDC, right? Money that they can condition, your access to this money and to your own savings by whatever rules they decide.
Yeah, looping us back to the beginning of the conversation when you said you've done something wrong in their eyes, they can just...
Yeah, exactly. They can just switch you off and punish you. And we've seen how that works, in Canada when we had the trucker protest. So I think that everybody understands this. I don't think this is anything new. We don't have to raise new alarm about this. But the problem is that this is an extremely, extremely complex problem. And I remember watching an interview with Augustin Carstens, the head of the Bank of International Settlements. I think this was in 2019.
Yep.
And at that time, he conceded that they have nothing going. They didn't even start on the CBDCs. And so then they rushed some R&D project, but he was saying it's very highly unlikely that we're going to have a real CBDC within 10 years. So now they're rushing the project because they're running out of time, because Europe is like the Titanic after it struck an iceberg. It's already disintegrating. And now, to try to keep it together, they are going the route of repression. And the repression would go with a digital ID and digital currency. But, even if you got it exactly right and all your new systems functioned flawlessly exactly as you wanted them to, you still won't prevent people from spawning gray and black markets. And you can't control that until you've put the control under the skin, until you chip the whole population. Because for as long as my monitoring is on my smart device, if I want to go transact to the black market with bitcoins, with pieces of gold and silver, with the packs of cigarettes or packs of coffee, whatever, I can just leave my home behind and go do my stuff.
Yep.
So, and this is real. If you introduce a very restrictive system of trade and payments and a currency that restricts people's liberties, 100% they're going to gravitate towards gray and black markets.
Yep.
So
and silently revolt.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. No, but this becomes a tsunami because this is illegal, right? So for as long as there's like a small segment of people who are inclined to breaking the law, then you can control it. You can discourage it. You can make an example out of them. But if people feel cheated, discouraged, they lose confidence in their governments and in their currency, and now you have a whole percentage of the population that goes to gray and black markets, you lost control. Countries like Venezuela and Argentina, is like a huge chunk of their GDP is transacted on black markets, like close to half. That
absolutely. And speaking of stable coins, that's exactly what's happening in the global south. You have millions and millions and millions of people in places with hyperinflation that have taken to the strongest currency that there is, which is the dollar, in a digital form through stable coins. They transact on USDT and USDC everywhere in Argentina, in Turkey, in Lebanon, and in Egypt, in Venezuela, because they want to have stability, relative stability. Everything is relative, right? And so they don't even ask permission. They just do it because they can. And then what happens? The governments have to comply with the people rather than the other way around.
Exactly. Because once that happens, the governments lose control. They also lose ability to impose taxes, because everything that happens in the black market, the government collects zero tax revenue on. And so it becomes like a big, giant magnet for consumers, because you can find everything there, and for the entrepreneurs, because you no longer have taxes, you no longer have government red tape, bureaucratic, administrative compliance rules and regulations and blah, blah, blah. You just do your business. And so these black markets suddenly spring up where people find everything they need there, and the government loses out, and you can't put half the population or the whole population in prison. You lost, which is why they're very, they tried in Nigeria at the end of 2021, I think, to introduce CBDCs. And this wasn't like a Nigerian home-cooked experiment. They sent them KPMG, and they sent experts from the European Central Bank and these consulting companies, and they really thought through this hyperledger architecture. They prepared everything, and they chose Nigeria specifically because it had a simpler jurisdiction with fewer kinds of money in the system. And so they saw like, okay, this is going to be our test market. The whole thing imploded and disintegrated in the space of 109 days. And they had to go back to the normal Naira. They went from Naira to e-Naira.
True.
And then, the president lost the next election. The central bank governor ended up in prison for real, not a golf course kind of prison, but a real one. And so they're taking a big risk. And to my mind, not only shouldn't they not be doing this, I think there's every likelihood that the project will work just as well as it did in Nigeria. And as it overlaps the disintegration of the European Union itself, I think it's just going to prompt individual governments like, Poland, Germany, to go back to their own currencies, to bring back the Deutsche Bank, the French franc, the zloty, and so forth.
I definitely hope so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because this is the true meaning of decentralization. We have to decentralize that power. They want to centralize. We have to try and do whatever we can to decentralize it.
Yeah.
So absolutely. I hope you're right. And I hope they fail dismally. Just to give another anecdote on that topic, I covered, the deputy governor of the Central Bank of Singapore saying in a recent conference that they have started working on the different types of CBDC pilots, but then they realized that they don't have a convenient way for cross-border payments and for interoperability between different currencies between different countries. And so they had to stop and take a step back and go back to like the planning board. And they came out from that planning session with a new project called Global Layer 1, which is a multi-year project, which they have to now multi-year, right? That now a few more years to try and re-architecturize the whole infrastructure for it, because they understand they don't have it. They looked at what exists today and they saw, okay, we have the public blockchain of Bitcoin, for example. You cannot expect us to use that because this is public and permissionless. So we can't use that. So we have to build a new instance of that blockchain, but this time it will be permissioned. So now they're trying to like reinvent the wheel. Like the infrastructure is already there with Bitcoin, for example, blockchain, but they're building it from scratch. So that's going to take them a few more years. Like who knows if they're going to succeed. This is a massive project. Bitcoin is like 15 years old and it took it so long to become as mature as it is today. But, good luck with that. I think that they are going to, like, on top of all the economical and social hurdles that you just mentioned, I think they have real technological hurdles to overcome if they want to be successful. They have to integrate this shit with so much. Like, it's not as easy as people think. We'll have digital ID and then we'll have CBDCs and poof, magic, it all works. Like the integration between those systems is so complex.
Extremely complex. Efrat, I was recently in a conference where one of the people from Accenture was making, the company is no longer called Accenture, it's something else, but you know what I mean.
Really?
I think they changed their names, but
okay.
That company, basically.
Sure.
So this guy was involved on the CBDC project, and he gave a presentation, and I can tell you, he did not look very confident, and he was explaining all the complexities that they need to overcome. And it's legal, and it's a morass. It's an absolute morass. And if you listen to him carefully,
I have to find that. Those are the things that give me hope.
They wouldn't. I don't think that they're going to be able to pull it off. It's going to be a mess. It's going to be a mess. People are going to be angry, and I guarantee you that many countries will put it in their constitution that CBDCs are forbidden by constitution. That's going to be the reaction. Oh, I also wanted to say something on account of Trump, because I've seen many people losing patience. Many people are deeply disappointed. I'm deeply disappointed with a number of things, but I wanted to mention this.
Yeah.
You also have to think about what didn't happen, right? And I'm sure that had Kamala Harris won the election, that the United States today would resemble Keir Starmer's Britain. You know, there would be a concerted attack against the constitutional rights, against free speech, censorship. 1,600 January 6 people wouldn't have been pardoned, and on and on and on and on. We see that there are now prosecutions being mounted against child trafficking, people involved in child trafficking and human trafficking. And Trump got the United States out of the World Health Organization and the Paris Climate Agreement.
Yeah,
and
correct.
they ended USAID, or they almost dismantled it completely. They are ending a Department of Education, the good department that gave us 72 genders and LGBT indoctrination and all these things.
So what are you disappointed about?
Oh, I was disappointed about. I was bitterly disappointed about them launching the bombing raid against Yemen, because they've been doing this for 10 years to no avail, and all they had to do is lean on Benjamin Netanyahu's government to allow humanitarian aid, and this could have been avoided. So this one, but at the same time, I have to say that this one is so staggeringly stupid that, again, I thought there must be something else. There must be something else about it. So, either it was another roundabout. Yeah, either it was another roundabout attack against Europe, against the European trading, because this trading route is the most important trading route in the world. Most of it goes to Europe, so they disrupted European trade. Second reason that I suspect is
you're
for
talking
them
about through Egypt, yeah, through
the Red Sea, yeah,
the Red Sea. Yeah.
It's about 55 to 60% of all global trade passes through the Red Sea every year. Yeah, and most of it by far is European trade. So if you disrupt that trade route, you kind of gave a stab to European economies again. Then I thought maybe they're just being tough against Yemen because they know nothing bad's going to come out of it, and to avoid going to war against Iran, because there's this hysterical, zealous pressure on Trump to go to war against Iran, which could have incalculable consequences, not just for the region, but for the United States, for the world. It could turn into nuclear Armageddon again. So maybe he's just like being tough. Why we're bombing Yemen? We're going to show them they're up, just to say, oh look, we're doing all this tough stuff to support Israel, but at the same time they're not really doing the real thing that Benjamin Netanyahu wants. And at the same time, maybe they're trying to wait out Netanyahu. Maybe he just falls under the weight of his own corruption and insanity of his policies with time, which, any day. So anyway, this was a profound disappointment for me.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the policy is so staggeringly dumb that I'm convinced there's got to be other reasons for it. And maybe the firing of Mike Waltz might be another indication that there's something more behind it than what we knew until now.
That's very, very probable. Alex, let's go back to Europe to end there. what do you think the short term is going to look like for Europeans living in Europe? Like, what do you think they are going to feel in, let's say, the next 6 to 12 months? Is it going to be more economic pressure, more violence in the streets? Like, and what should they be alert to?
Yeah, there's going to be economic pressure for sure. I think that there's no way to avoid the effects of 2 decades of insane misallocation of resources and wealth. On the positive side, that's already done. It's already lost. It's gone. And so I think that, we have a chance to turn the place around. We have a chance to set the nations of Europe on a new path. Already 20 years ago, Vladimir Putin was talking about integrations from Vladivostok to Lisbon. So, I'm pretty sure that the Russians and the Chinese, on a different basis, want to integrate Europe into the Belt and Road Initiative and all this. And I think that if the people of Europe speak up and demand this, then we get that. There's going to be a bumpy transition period. I think that it'll depend on us again. If we're defeatist, if we're intimidated, if we're afraid of ourselves and the future, is going to be difficult. But if we look forward to the future and understand that there's going to be a tough transition period, but that we are working towards a better future for our children and their children, then it could be not only less painful and more easy to tolerate, it could also be rewarding in ways that we can't even fathom at this moment. Like in the sense of giving you meaning that you didn't envision before, giving you kind of moral and spiritual rewards that we just don't have in this stupid matrix of meaningless jobs.
Yeah.
Lonely cubicles, dependence on the state. We are being ripped off at a scale that is hard to imagine.
Yeah.
I would say that if we throw this system into the bin of history where it belongs, that we could probably be 10 times as wealthy and prosperous as we are. I mean, practically everything we buy, everything we do, the tax and interest component to it is probably more than half. Like if you buy a house and you get a mortgage, you're going to buy 2 houses, really. Add to it interests, that is, add to it the fees, add to it the insurance, the government taxes, the taxes are eating us up. To have 100 euros to spend, in France, you have to earn more than 200 euros. That's just the government taxes, the interest on loans and everything. It's just insane. So it's very hard for people to even envision what life could be like if things weren't as they are. Like we are like the chickens who have been raised inside the feedlots for many generations. We're not even ourselves. We don't even know what we would be like if we were out in the sun and in liberty. And so I think that as we take this path and as we start to discover who we really are, what our birthright on this planet is, I think that the rewards will not just be in peace and greater prosperity. I think that the rewards will be moral and spiritual. And we will collectively fall in love with creation and with humanity. I'm certain of that.
Amen. Amen. And I'm with you that everything we are witnessing right now is a result of the last stages of the fiat debt-based monetary system, that pressure, that horrible consequence of taxation and inflation, this is all a result of the design of the fiat monetary system. And if we start educating ourselves more about finances, because I think we reach the time that it's time. We have to do it. If we don't do it, it's gonna be painful. And so if you go and learn about the Austrian economics, the Austrian School of Economics, if you go and learn about sound money, about gold, about Bitcoin, you understand how you can take back ownership over your private property and ensure your private property rights, even if the state doesn't give them to you or tries to abolish that from you. So there are tools, there are alternatives to that horrible fiat monetary system. And I encourage people to go and learn more, because it is time. Even if life is really pressuring you and you feel like you can't, you're troubled, there is no time, you need to put some time aside in order to educate yourself financially now and hedge what's yours, because the state is going to come after it. This is my take on that last stage of the debt-based fiat monetary system.
Yes, I would agree with everything you said, except for one thing. We need more than just sound money, because this insane oligarchic system of governance that we have today, we had it with almost exactly the same symptom of social decay.
Yeah.
We had it even when gold coin and silver coin were money. So there was no question about the soundness of money. There's a question of incentives that percolate through the system from the money-lending oligarchies that always end up concentrating all wealth in the big financial centers with this oligarchy and drawing it away from everybody else.
Absolutely.
So we have to understand how the system works, how it creates the incentives for total war all the time, because the Western one thing that the Western civilization has given to the world, in addition to the nice things, is a totally pathogenic system that has ended up destroying 6 major indigenous civilizations around the world over the past 5 centuries, and has depopulated massive swaths of the earth and repopulated them with uprooted slaves. So something is really wrong and pathogenic, but it's not in us. It's in this parasite that inserts itself and makes you, like the tapeworm makes you crave sugar because the tapeworm actually wants sugar. Well, this system also is making us do things that aren't part of our nature, but they actually reward bad behaviors, and then they draw to itself the sociopathic and psychopathic types that end up running the show and being the top of the heap.
Well,
but anyway,
there's no disagreement there, but this is exactly the incentive structure and the power structure of the system, and that's why I'm saying if you don't put the time aside to learn about how it's designed, then you cannot resist it. You just comply without knowing that you're complying. Without, you face economic decision every second, every minute. And if you don't understand what's driving this force that pressure that is being put on you at the moment, then you have no alternative. You have no choice. If you want to create choice, you have to have knowledge. And so, yes, it takes some education to understand how they have brilliantly designed a system that will enslave humanity. And so that breaking through the enslavement is both monetary and mentally, spiritually, right? Even emotionally. I think we definitely feel that when we have that sovereignty once again over our body, ourselves, our mind, controlling our thoughts and not letting someone else dictate for us what to believe, or it's insane. So self-sovereignty, take back your power. Absolutely. Alex, this has been Fantastic. Thank you so much. I'm so happy we did that.
Always nice to join you. Always good to see you. You have this contagious smile always on your face. It's beautiful to see.
Thank
and
you.
so warm greetings to everyone watching. Thank you for arranging this and for your invite. And I look forward to the next time.
Wonderful. We will do this again. Thank you so much. Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone. Thanks for joining.
Thanks for being with us. Please take a minute to give this episode a like, a comment, and subscribe or follow. And please share it with your friends so they can also get value and choose to take some positive action in their lives. Till next time.